Before we dive into the analysis today, I want you to do something with me. Close your eyes for just a moment and try to imagine nothing. No light, no space, no time. Just the sheer, crushing weight of absolute non-existence. Well, this is the blank canvas of human history. Every single civilization that has ever existed, from the earliest hunter-gatherer societies all the way up to our modern technological superpowers, has had to stare into this vast, dark void. And they had to construct an answer to the single most profound mystery of our reality. Because to build a society, you have to build a foundation upon the unknown. So where did all this come from? Now, you might be wondering why we're starting here. This is not just a theoretical question for ancient philosophers sitting on mountaintops debating the cosmos. It is a highly practical, urgent reality. Right now, today, 5 billion people on Earth belong to traditions that have confidently answered this exact question. And the answers they gave are operating right now. They are operating in modern courts. They govern the logic of modern parliaments. Think about it. If a creation story determines that a deity promised a specific valley to a specific tribe, that theology instantly becomes the foundational logic for a modern geopolitical border dispute. Every war has a flag, every flag has a god, and every god has a highly specific plan for the beginning. To actually understand the operating systems of global political behavior, we need to sequentially examine 6 distinct theological frameworks. We're going to look at Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and finally, the African lens.
Let's start with part 1, Judaism, the author and the novel. We begin our explainer with the Torah. The text opens with a single, incredibly unadorned statement. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. A singular, all-powerful being literally speaks the universe into existence. This establishes our first major concept, known as ex nihilo. That is Latin for creation from nothing. God creates from absolutely nothing. There is no pre-existing material lying around. There is no chaotic matter that he simply organizes into a better shape. The material universe simply did not exist before God created it. I want you to think of an author writing a novel. The characters, the cities, and the landscapes inside that book exist only because the author wrote them onto a totally blank page. The author is not trapped inside the novel. The author exists outside of it. That relationship is exactly how Judaism understands God and creation. God is completely outside the material he created. Because of this, time itself begins at the definitive moment of creation. This establishes a strict linear timeline. It is a timeline that moves relentlessly forward toward a definitive end.
The text then states that humanity is made in the Tselem Elohim. This is a Hebrew term that translates to the image of God. Now, we have to be precise here. This is not about a physical resemblance. It is entirely about status, and it is about delegated authority. Politically, this concept completely changes the architecture of human civilization. If every single human carries the royal image of the divine author, then human life has inherent unalienable value. That value cannot be revoked by a king, and it cannot be revoked by a state. This forms the direct, undeniable theological foundation for our modern human rights frameworks. Furthermore, let's go back to our analogy. If the author of the novel owns the entire story, the author has the absolute right to grant specific territory to specific characters within that story. This plants the historical seed for the concept of a covenant land claim. It fundamentally shapes exactly how legal rights to territory are understood in the entire Abrahamic paradigm.
That brings us to part 2, Christianity. The creator enters the creation.
Christianity takes the Jewish Genesis account, and fundamentally it inherits it completely unchanged. It retains the exact same God. It retains the same ex nihilo creation. It retains the same humanity made in the divine image. But Christianity introduces a revolutionary new layer. It starts with the opening words of the Gospel of John, which reads, "In the beginning was the Word." This brings us to the concept of the Logos. The word, or Logos in ancient Greek, is identified precisely with Jesus Christ. Christianity teaches that Jesus was not created. Instead, he was present at and deeply instrumental in the creation of absolutely everything. Imagine an architect. This architect designs a massive, highly intricate building from the outside. He draws up the blueprints, he builds it, and then once it is completely finished, he steps through the front door and actually moves into it. Jesus, in Christian theology, designed the universe and then became human within it. By identifying Jesus with the Logos, which remember, was already widely understood as the rational ordering principle of the ancient Greek world, this brilliant theological synthesis occurred. It made Christianity intellectually unstoppable. It allowed this theology to seamlessly merge with and eventually completely convert the Roman Empire.
However, the Christian narrative contains a critical rupture. Adam and Eve disobeyed God in the garden. This introduces what is formally known as original sin. Creation begins perfectly, but it immediately breaks. Consider it exactly like corrupted software.
The original source code was totally pure, but a devastating virus was introduced at the very beginning of the operating system's life. Now, every subsequent copy of that software carries the exact same corruption. For Christianity, the world is fundamentally broken. Humanity requires a divine rescuer to step in and fix the corrupted code. From a geopolitical perspective, this is absolutely vital to understand. Humans are granted a dominion mandate over the earth, but the territory they are managing is deeply flawed. Geopolitically, this asserts that the world as it currently exists is not how God intended it. It is a broken, often hostile environment. Therefore, humans are politically and spiritually authorized to actively subdue, repair, and manage this earth.
Now we move to Part 3, Islam, the Appointed Manager.
Islam shares the exact same Abrahamic foundation. It fully acknowledges the creation of the heavens, the earth, and Adam. However, we must carefully map a critical theological divergence here regarding human nature itself. Islam firmly and explicitly rejects original sin. In the Quranic account, Adam and Eve sin, yes, but God forgives them immediately. They descend to earth, but there is absolutely no inherited corruption passed down to the rest of humanity. Instead, every single human being is born in a state known as fitra. Think of fitra as a pristine factory setting on a brand new device. You are born with a pure, fully functional operating system. Humanity is not broken by a corrupted code. Humanity is merely forgetful. Therefore, politically and spiritually, no divine savior is required to repair us. The software isn't broken. We simply need an instruction manual to remind us of our original factory settings.
And that instruction manual comes in the specific form of the Quran. This is a text so precise that its very linguistic mechanics are considered a direct divine manifestation. The rigorous rules for Arabic pronunciation are known as tajid and makhraj. These rules dictate the exact, millimeter-specific placement of the tongue and the precise sound of every single letter. The text is not viewed merely as a human translation of inspired ideas. The specific Arabic syllables themselves are understood as the literal, unalterable speech of God. Geopolitically, viewing a text as the literal sound mechanics of the divine shapes an incredibly rigid, highly precise framework for law and for societal structure.
This absolute precision defines humanity's geopolitical role. It does this through the concept of the Khalifa. The Quran states that God placed a Khalifa on the earth. This translates to a vicegerent, a steward, or an appointed manager. The crucial defining point here is that humanity does not own the creation. This role is identical to a property manager who is hired to run a massive building they do not legally own. They operate it entirely on behalf of the true owner, and they live with the absolute certainty that they will eventually face a strict audit on exactly how they manage those assets. This establishes a highly specific Islamic environmental theology. It also establishes a historical suspicion of absolute private property. You cannot destroy and you cannot hoard what fundamentally belongs to Allah. This entire framework is anchored by Tawheed, the absolute, indivisible oneness of God. The Creator does not become a man, and he never, ever shares his ultimate ownership of the territory.
Moving to Part 4, Hinduism, the Eternal Wheel. We are now going to pivot completely away from Abrahamic certainty. We are stepping into dharmic cyclical time with Hinduism. This is a robust 3,500-year-old framework. Interestingly, Hinduism holds multiple creation accounts simultaneously. You have the cosmic egg, Brahma's dream, the sacrifice of the cosmic man. These are not viewed as competing contradictions. They are viewed as complementary windows into a reality that is simply too vast for just one story. This profound humility is perfectly captured in the Nasadiya Sukta. This is a hymn from the ancient Rig Veda that describes the time before existence. It asks who truly knows where creation came from. And it concludes with a staggering, beautiful thought. We do not know. Even God may not know. This profound agnosticism is a completely different epistemology from the Abrahamic traditions we just looked at. Absolute certainty is replaced with infinite scale. Politically, a culture built on a foundational text that openly tolerates mystery operates with a remarkably high tolerance for contradiction. It does not demand submission to a single definitive starting point. That infinite scale is measured in what is called the Yuga cycle. Hinduism does not believe in a single, one-time creation event. The universe is created, it is sustained, and it is destroyed in an endless sequence of 4 ages. Instead of a clock counting forward to a final apocalyptic hour, I want you to picture a wheel turning endlessly. It passes through the exact same points over and over and over again. We are currently set to be in the Kali Yuga. That is the final age of decline before the wheel inevitably turns and begins the cycle anew. There is no ultimate beginning and there is no final end. The psychological and political impact of this is absolutely massive. Living in a universe that will endlessly repeat itself deeply alters a civilization's urgency. It shifts their perspective regarding environmentalism, or the frantic political drive to build a permanent, lasting utopia on Earth.
Within this endlessly turning wheel is the concept of Brahman. Brahman is the ultimate unchanging reality. But Brahman is not an architect standing outside the building. Everything that currently exists is a direct, tangible expression of Brahman. To grasp this, let's look back at our previous framework. If the Abrahamic God is the author writing the novel, Brahman is literally the very paper the novel is printed on. The divine is present in every single word, every object, and every living being. The universe is not a separate, manufactured artifact. It is God's continuous, flowing self-expression. Politically and socially, this changes everything. When the divine is imbued directly into the material world, it fundamentally alters the hierarchy of nature. It profoundly changes exactly how humans view and interact with animals, with rivers, and, crucially, with each other.
Part 5. Buddhism. Conditionality without a creator.
Buddhism emerged from the exact same Dhammic soil as Hinduism, but it introduces a radical forensic philosophical shift. Buddhism does not offer a story of beginnings. Instead, it offers a purely forensic description of exactly how reality functions mechanically, and it explains existence entirely without the need for a divine architect. The core mechanical law of Buddhism is called dependent origination. This rule states that absolutely everything arises in strict dependence on prior causes and conditions. Nothing at all has an independent self-caused existence. You can visualize this conditionality by looking at a simple flame. A flame does not magically appear from a divine command. It strictly requires three things: fuel, oxygen, and a spark. If you remove just one of those specific conditions, the flame instantly dies. Reality arises from conditions, not from a creator God. And if you ask what created the conditions, well, the answer is just more conditions stretching backward in an infinite chain. Politically, this is profound. It means morality is not a divine mandate sent from above. Morality is a meticulous, mechanical calculation of cause and effect.
In fact, Buddhism goes so far as to actively teach that obsessing over an absolute beginning is a fatal trap. The Buddha famously illustrated this using the parable of the poisoned arrow. Imagine a man who is shot in the chest with a deeply poisoned arrow. A doctor arrives immediately to save his life, but the wounded man refuses the treatment. He looks at the doctor and demands to know the exact name of the archer. He wants to know the specific type of wood used to carve the bow, and he demands to know the exact aerodynamic trajectory of the shot before he will let the doctor intervene. What happens? The man will die before he ever gets his philosophical answers. Demanding an absolute author or searching for a definitive first spark is seen as a major philosophical error. It distracts humanity from the actual goal. This specific theology shapes a society focused entirely on the practical, immediate alleviation of present suffering. It focuses on managing current conditions rather than enforcing divine, historical mandates from the past.
Part 6. The African Lens. The Creator who became creation.
We arrive now at our sixth framework. This is completely unique among the traditions we've explored. This lens shifts the focus entirely away from a creator ruling from the sky, and it shifts away from an endless mechanical wheel. This framework roots the divine directly into the physical earth beneath our feet. In Zulu theology, we encounter Uhlanga, the primordial source, and Unkulunkulu, the Great One. Unkulunkulu emerges from a primordial bed of reeds. But here is the massive, critical distinction. He does not step out of those reeds to rule the world from above. I want you to picture how a seed operates. A seed does not build a tree from the outside. The seed completely dissolves. It literally becomes the tree. Unkulunkulu is the only creator in these six traditions who literally became his own creation. He merges entirely with the physical earth. The earth itself is divine. This alters the Abrahamic concept of land ownership completely. You do not just live on the land, and you certainly cannot simply buy or sell it like a commodity. You are a physical extension of the Creator who literally became the land. Therefore, to sell the territory is to literally sell the divine ancestor.
So, let's step back. We have just sequentially synthesized the operating systems of human history. We mapped the Abrahamic fault line. This gives us a creator positioned completely outside the universe. It gives us a strict linear timeline moving forward, a broken humanity requiring repair, and a strict mandate to manage the earth. We mapped the Dharmic alternative. This provides an eternal, turning wheel of time, a universe functioning as God's continuous self-expression, and a purely mechanical reality driven strictly by conditions. And finally, we explored the African embodiment. This gives us a creator who literally dissolved into and became the very ground we walk on. Let me be clear.
These are not just ancient myths, they are not just beautiful poems, these are the active, living blueprints that are directly dictating modern law, providing the ultimate justification for war, and shaping the dynamics of global power today.
We have forensically looked at 6 highly distinct accounts of the beginning. They cannot possibly all produce the exact same political consequences. If 5 billion people confidently believe their God made the world, and if every single one of them believes their exact, highly specific version of that story, who does the world belong to? That is the exact question we will answer in the next explainer in this series.